Hello, I'm Jonathan Hash, and I chose to apply a critical remix to the cover of E.B. Zoboy's young adult novel, Pride. I decided on Pride because I felt it had a very strong counterstory to the story typically told in young adult romance. As an adaptation of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, it also gives us a counterstory to Austen's ideas of community, class, identity, race, and gender roles based on a celebration of multi ethnic and multiracial characters in an incredibly diverse neighborhood. I started my cover remix by researching photographs of the neighborhoods and people of Bushwick. Almost all of the photographic images I used in this cover remix were actually of Bushwick and its inhabitants. In the novel, Zuri's neighborhood, through her descriptions, becomes a character in its own right, and I wanted to express that in the cover. Pride isn't just about the interaction between Zuri and Darius, it's also about the community of Bushwick and what is happening to it. In my reading of the book, I felt there were three sides to Bushwick: the residential side, where the Benitez's apartment was, the slightly ghetto side, where the graffiti and young toughs were to be found, and the gentrified areas that Zuri described as not really feeling like Bushwick anymore, while still acknowledging their use as a source of money for the neighborhood. It was the first two that I chose to focus on as they're the areas most meaningful to Zuri. Instead of the burnished brown cover with its Regency era engraving, I chose for the front cover a picture featuring a row of apartments with stairs and gates that matched the description of Zuri's building. For the back cover, I chose a picture of a strip of wall and sidewalk featuring a graffiti mural of a Latinx woman and a black man, which reminded me of the area near the bodega where Zuri and her sisters go for snacks and groceries. Both of these are actually images of Bushwick, and I felt they gave a potential reader a true visual of the setting and the character of the novel. I wanted to feature Darius and Zuri on the cover as well, but as real people, not as ambiguous cameo portraits or airbrushed models or fantastical paintings. The image I used to represent Zuri is one I pulled from a photo of two men dancing at an Afro Latinx festival that was held in Brooklyn. I picked this image because it was a real representation of a young woman that could be Zuri. I wanted her to be in the act of dancing because Zuri has to dance, whether to the beat of her street in the evening or as the daughter of Ochu in Madrina's basement Santeria rituals. The image representing Darius is actually a photo of actor-singer Brett Gray from a red carpet event. I felt in this photo that he looked wealthy, put together, and slightly aloof. Perfect for Darius Darcy. Notice that the two figures face away from each other but are still very close proximity to each other. I arranged them this way to indicate the initial dislike and tension between them, while also showing the attraction that neither one understands or really wants to acknowledge. I wanted to keep the bright pink a symbolic color to emphasize Zuri's identity as a strong and independently minded young woman. Zuri knows who she is and what she wants. I used a font for the title on the cover and spine that reminded me of both Zuri's Afro Latinx Caribbean roots and of the celebration of culture and community that we see both at the block party at the beginning of the book and after Madrina's funeral toward the end of the novel. At the bottom of my cover is the phrase "a Pride and Prejudice critical remix." I borrowed the phrase from the original cover but added critical as a nod to the purpose of this new cover. On the back, I kept the phrase "Zuri Benitez has pride," because she does. Not only the problematic kind of pride that Austen's novel revolves around, but also pride in her heritage, her neighborhood, and in herself and her family as one of the famous, or maybe infamous, Benitez sisters. I reduced the summary on the back cover to a blurb that focused more on Zuri as a modern feminist and the social and diversity issues addressed in the book. I added real reviews that highlighted Zuri's diverse ethnic and racial heritage and mentioned the social issues in the Bushwick neighborhood that are so dear to both Zuri and the author. It reads as follows: a lively and innovative Pride and Prejudice retelling starring a fully rounded Afro-Latinx YA character. The Hornbook. In this updated retelling of Jane Austen's classic Pride and Prejudice, Zuri, an independent and liberated young woman from Bushwick, Brooklyn, will not compromise her culture or her future at Howard University for a romance with Darius Darcy. Ibi Zoboi gives us a wonderful counterstory to the typical teen romance by skillfully balancing cultural identity, class, and gentrification against the perils of a summer crush. A razor-sharp remix of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice that deals in gentrification, racism, love, culture, and heritage, all helmed by the intelligent teens in New York's Bushwick neighborhood. Book list. On the front inside flap, I wrote a new summary that focused less on the adaptation aspects of the novel and focused more instead on the richness and diversity reflected in the story and its characters. It reads, for Zuri Benitez, pride is important. Brooklyn pride, family pride, and pride in her Afro-Latinx heritage. When the wealthy Darcy family moves next door, Zuri wants nothing to do with her two teenage sons, Darius and Ainsley, or with the changes to the neighborhood that their arrival heralds. Zuri is the practical one out of her four sisters, with her older sister Janae succumbing to the charms of Ainsley, and her three younger sisters pulling her in different directions. She isn't about to fall for uptight Darius or let the Darcys change the music of her beloved Bushwick. Zuri has a plan. She is going to attend Howard University after she graduates. She is going to hold together the Afro-Latinx and Caribbean roots of her neighborhood, and nobody, not that good-looking Darius or his wealthy gentrifying family, is going to change her plans. On the back flap, I placed a color photo of the author, Ibi Zoboi, and gave an abridged bio borrowed from the original book, and added a quote from the author that I think expresses what she's trying to say with her adaptation. Ibi Zoboi is the author of American Street, a National Book Award finalist. She was born in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. She holds an MFA in writing for young adults from Vermont College of Fine Arts. After living in Brooklyn for most of her life, she now lives in New Jersey with her family. If you are passionate about social issues and instilling confidence in young girls, please share your art, your voice, and your time. Stir your creativity and passion. Ibi Zoboi. To conclude, I just want to say that as we saw when we went into the field in the bookstore, far too many young adult book covers are whitewashed or ambiguous about the race, culture, gender, or ableness of the protagonist in the stories that they cover. It was this issue that I wanted to address. While the cover of Pride does depict busts of Darius and Zuri, I felt that they were small, they were ambiguous in their meaning, and they didn't stand out or make a statement as to what and who the characters were. It seemed the publisher was more concerned about drawing attention to the novel's connection with Pride and Prejudice rather than the diversity of its author, its characters, and its setting. What I intended to achieve with my remix of the cover of Pride was a visual representation of the real place and the real people represented by the novel, and a verbal and written aspect that emphasized it as a counter story. I want you to be able to pick up my remixed cover and know what you are about to read is a book that acts as a window into the unfamiliar for those of us in the privileged majority, and as a mirror that reflects an underrepresented minority. I wanted to say to that reader, yes, here is a story about people that look like you, talk like you, and live like you. Here is a book that you can see yourself looking back from. Thank you.